right. Hi, everyone. Here's Astrid Mueller, and I have a guest, Franny Bryan Scott, with me. Hi, Franny. I am so excited to be here with all of you for a new episode for my podcast radio show where I talk all about remote possibilities to inspire female business owners that literally anything is possible anywhere and that following your heart and your passion really lights you up from the inside, and we can all do it. So I have a very intriguing topic for you today because Franny is doing this. She is really doing what her soul calls her to do. And she has a very kind of taboo topic that she's totally pursuing because it is so beneficial to the world as well. So she's embracing all kinds of things to bring it out there, doing what she loves. I'm going to quickly introduce you, Franny, and then I'll give the word to you to fill in any blanks that I may have. So Franny is a artist, a creative grief and life transitions coach, which with a focus on people who have been touched by death in some way, and maybe they have some regrets. They are just like not feeling like fully like released with that grief, and they don't know what to do about it. So she has really cool modalities. She's an incredible intuitive artist as well. And I know Franny from many layers, and I'm very intrigued about her modalities. And she does things like death cafes. And so we're having a really interesting conversation ahead. Franny, do you want to fill in the blanks a little bit? Like, what is your mission? What did I forget to mention? What would you describe as your business? Go ahead.
My business, honestly, from what I gave you, didn't miss anything. I would say that my business relies on some really important pillars of, the topic is death and loss.
Yes.
But the pillars that it rests on are ones that you might not think combine with that so well, like creativity, like play, and spirituality. And people are probably more used to spirituality and death coming together, but creativity and play are deeply important to me in how I address this issue.
Yes, I love that you bring lightness to this very deep topic. Can you share a bit more of like, what does that mean? So you combine creativity, play, and spirituality with a topic of passing and death and mourning and all that. What does that look like? What do you do? Like, explain. I know it, but
how do you do
that? Yeah, that's tricky. Go ahead.
How I do it and why I do it, I think are two really good questions. The how is I'm a trained art therapist, so one of the expertises that I bring is how to use specifically the visual arts, but also poetry or however else one wants and needs to express their sense of meaning or their feelings. I bring that ability to the work. And that can look really different for different people. For some people, they're like right into it and go, oh yeah, totally. I want to paint how I feel about this.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to write a poem or a letter to the person who I'm mourning. For others, that can be a real block. And actually what they find is that the idea, and this isn't just for people who are mourning an actual death, it can be for people who simply are recognizing, I'm not going to be immortal.
Yes.
Especially for people in my age bracket. There's that recognition that, my parents are aging and I may very well lose them within the next several years, 10 years. Or I may have already lost friends, things like that. We get to that point where we go, what do I see that they regretted? What do I see that I did not do that I regret, or that I might, I don't want to get to the end of my life saying, I wish I had. So that's some of the I want, that's some of the why I do it this way. Because when you get to that point, sometimes you get stuck and you get this awareness of, I don't want to regret anything. So now I don't even know what to do.
Yeah.
And I always talk with my hands and my body.
No, that's great. Well, you must have Italian roots.
Not one. But I do believe this is where the play piece comes in.
Yes.
And where my particular form of art comes in, where it's got to be embodied. I think that's one of the things that we notice. Especially you'll notice if you're around somebody who's in deep grief, there is a sense of numbness or stopped.
Wow.
Being frozen. And art is a really gentle way that can allow us to maybe start just moving this, you know?
Yeah. Yes.
You know, finger paint, clay, rocks.
Yeah.
Things that you can actually have some control over.
Yeah.
Allow us to engage with something we don't have control over, which is that we're not immortal.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. You touched on some really interesting points on like how this works and why this is so healing and beneficial and an access for pretty much anybody. So I love that you do this for the world and for people. I'm curious, like, how did you, what's your story? Like, what led you to do this?
Every once in a while, I wonder just exactly how weird a kid I was. Because when I look back and say, well, how did I get here? I was doing things like finding, sorry for crossing the taboo lines here, but you know, I would see the dead bird.
Please do. Yes.
On the side of the road and go and just feel immense feelings about that as a child.
Oh, wow.
And I would bury the bird and I would create a little ritual and I would, it was important. A lot of my childhood was about change and about moving. We moved, I mean, I wasn't a military family or anything like that, but I was an academic family, which meant moving until you got tenure. And so travel has always been a big piece. So change has always been a big piece. And change, frankly, that's a form of death. You have to let go of everything and you have to move on to the next thing. The other thing that was deeply impactful in my life was that there were a couple of really powerful experiences of death in my communities. A classmate took his own life in grade 7, which is if you think from this age looking back, that was like, wow, that's 12. What level of despair does that take? And what I noticed even then was how ill prepared our school, our community, everybody. A friend and I wrote a letter to the editor at our local, tiny little newspaper about how angry we were about the picture they had showed. Just, I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's just not really realizing that we were not held in that experience.
Yes.
And another classmate died in a really tragic accident at the very end of high school. And we were better prepared at that point. We were older teenagers. He had a spiritual community that could contain it and invited us into that. Which was a big deal, I think, that a community could contain us and help us through that.
Yes.
But for me personally, I ended up doing art about all of those things. That was just an intuitive, instinctual thing, I think.
You're processing for yourself. And when did you start sharing your intuitive art in that context with others?
That took a much longer time.
Yeah.
That was kind of a hidden piece. I was a little bit more out there about the fact that I wrote poetry in high school because, bad poetry, high school. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And then it kind of went underground. I already knew that I needed to be in this giving field, I suppose. I went immediately into a counseling degree out of
Okay.
university. So by the time I graduated, I was 22, which is
Yeah.
again really young.
Yeah.
Ended up just in a pool too deep for me to swim in at that age. So, when people say, how did you get started in this? I often say, well, it started when I ended things. I burnt out in like that much time, and
wow.
And immediately went, I'm going to be an artist. And actually, the reason I'm sitting here is because this piece, this weaving, is the first piece that I made. It's not the first, but it was the first art form that I entered in that period.
Oh, wow.
And it was tactile.
It is so beautiful. So, whoa, that is such a powerful story. So thank you for sharing so much about that. So what you just said is that you had a burnout moment, and so many people have that in a later point in life, and I did too. Like, I love that it sounds like you found art as a way out to process that. Yeah. Do you want to share a bit more of like what, because we're talking about, remote possibilities and turning challenges into possibilities. So, so how did art help you? Go ahead.
It's all got to do with metaphor, I think, for me.
Nice.
And because my art did end up being textiles. I mean, as an art therapist, we do painting, we do everything. But for my heart art, is textile. And the metaphors of, any word you pick that's got to do with textiles, knotting, tying, cutting, things being woven together, or things being tangled up, or just texture and feelings, like emotional feelings, have for me really deep resonance.
Wow, you just inspired me in a big way with my own intuitive art kind of background. I'm like, whoa, I never thought about textiles.
Textiles is a cool thing. So that's you might have to bring me back on track here. Where was I going?
No, it's totally great. So you found your way to deal with your burnout, and you discovered that art was really helping you in a big way. And it sounds like at some point in your journey, you kind of felt your calling of starting your business or restarting. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I stayed in the arts only space for a long time. And what I did not know at the time was how much that was helping me. Before I'd ever heard the term art therapy, that's basically what I was doing.
Nice.
I think that when it really became, there was a point, interestingly, around the year, around 9/11, actually. I had been. We had moved very remotely to a tiny little island off of the coast of British Columbia. And I was making my living essentially making costumes.
Oh, wow. Whoa. Kudos to you, because that doesn't sound like an easy way to make a living.
I was making, let's say I was between the my husband and me, we were making money the way we were making money. That was my contribution. And it was good enough. But it was cool because it was, again, all about changing. All of the costumes I made, they were either for performance artists.
Oh my gosh, that's so
genius. Really weird, like stilt walking giant puppets, like 13 feet tall puppets and things like that. And then for kids, I was making wings that you could take off and change. And I went through a lot of lame. You'd love it. It was sparkly. Everything was sparkly.
I want to come to your costume shop from back then.
But things just kind of dried up again, because they do, right?
Yeah.
I kind of had reached a completion point with that. And I didn't really know what to do about that. And just decided, okay, I need to travel. I need to move my body again to do something different. I need inspiration. And I just made the decision to go on a short road trip. It was like 6 weeks.
Nice.
But interestingly, the date I had set for leaving was September 13th, 2001. So it was 2 days after.
Yes. 9/11, yes.
After 9/11.
Yeah.
And everybody thought I was nuts. You're not still going, are you? Because we were, I mean, I'm talking from Canada. So for us, it was this big deal going into the United States.
Oh, yes, yes.
And what that, I did not intend it to be, but that entire trip was all about watching a country deal with tragedy.
Death. Yeah.
And death. And I watched the flag starting at half-mast. Every, gas station and, pancake house, things that I would pass, the flags were all at half-mast and going. And I even went to a couple of this, the community services that they would have about it, like in those first few days. And I just watched people being with each other around it and talking with each other about it, and talking about being afraid, and talking about, oh, you never know what's going to happen. Well, what do we do with, we might die.
Wow.
And it was incredibly inspiring. So when I came back, that was really clearly for me, that was the beginning of taking the next steps into how do we, this art thing is transformative, because I wrote and I painted and I did a bunch of things that you can do on the road.
Nice. Nice. So I love that you are reflecting. Your story is so powerful in the sense that the universe brings that, like, if we're open, like, we can find the perfect inspiration, and by just following our heart, even if it's like people say, like, what, are you crazy, like, doing that, that's wild, whatever, you just went with it, and it seemed to be like the perfect alignment to guide you to your soul calling, it sounds like. Really. And like for those listeners or viewers who believe that we may choose our life path before we come to this world, like, how beautifully did you like line everything up? I'm like, oh wow, perfect, right?
For chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. Yep.
Yeah, really great. So you shared about your past, and you are just in a very interesting position right now. I want to touch on that a bit, because you're in a new transition phase right now, right? So you have been doing this work with one-on-one clients
in person,
in person, yes. And you're currently shifting into the online business space. You may move to a new place in the world and like uproot yourself again. Tell us a bit more about two things. Like, one, I'm curious about, what do you feel you're calling from here? Like, what's your bigger thing you would love to create? Let's start with that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the bigger calling is, it is creating a space where people can find comfort and inspiration. And I think both of those are important in the face of death. That when we, because we have to, when we get confronted with somebody else's mortality, our mortality, that's when all of these questions get bigger and more important. So how do we say, yes, I am alive now. I choose to live with a sense of meaning and play, and I want to make my mark in the world, or I want to make, I always say make, because I'm an artist. I want to make something of this life that I have been given this time, and I want to live it joyfully. Here's the line, because this is a thing in the death industry. Who do I follow on social media? A lot of funeral homes. But how do we hold compassion for the sadness and the, that space where, like I was talking before, that blocked space, that desperately sad, dark night of the soul space. How do we hold deep compassion for that and hold open the possibility for the next thing? So my bigger vision has to do with reaching further out, not just it's lovely. I adore my work with, one person in my space.
Mm-hmm.
We make a thing together. That's beautiful. And that perpetuates the myth that we can do this alone, and we can't. This has to be a community effort.
Nice.
So I envision being able to go into communities anywhere and start facilitating the conversations around death. There is a beautiful movement that already exists, which I would totally send people to, even if I never did this myself. The Death Cafe movement is.
Yes, I was going to bring that up. That was like totally stunning me. I'm like, what is that?
Anybody can run a Death Cafe, and that's not art based. It's discussion based. It's okay to talk about death. It's like having a sex cafe. Let's go talk about sex. The thing that we weren't allowed to talk about, people are more, you can talk about sex positivity and things like that. Death positive is a little harder. And that term
in our culture,
that term actually is a taken term. That's Caitlin Doty. Read her, she's amazing.
Okay.
But to really say, here I am, I'm going to die, and that's not a depressing thing, that's an energizing thing. How do we cope with that? But because I come from the therapeutics background, and because I was the kid who cried at every dead bird, how do I hold compassion? How do I help people hold compassion for their journey through it, and that open space for, wow, this is energizing.
Yeah.
So I want to have more community discussions and art shows, and to make it a more energized and more embodied way of dealing with it, not just talking about it.
Yes, I love it. And engaging with other people and like making it less taboo, as what I'm hearing as a big like a culture change. Is almost like you're initiating a culture change and facilitating more of that. Is amazing. So yes. Oh, you're totally doing it. I'm all about possibility, and I'm telling you, I see that. So you have another thing that I would love to touch on. When you mentioned earlier the topic play.
Yes.
You actually are in the process of developing a game for your brand. Can you tell us a bit more? I know that's been percolating a little bit, and you don't have to share.
It's going to be brushes with death, because art, death, yes, important.
Perfect. What a name. I love it.
What it will be meant for is a way to engage in anybody could play with it by themselves, and find it, draw a card, find the feeling, and engage artistically with that. I do that with clients already, but as a broader game that can be played in community or in group settings, where there's going to be the sharing and the expressing on a deeper level than just here's my philosophical thought about death, which is important, but it's not the only thing.
Right. Yeah, I love it. So you are already on the path of touching people all around the world. Because no, literally, I mean, this is a great business strategy, talking about doing things, possibility from anywhere in the world. You're about to uproot yourself, travel potentially to a different country. And then you have this big vision of taking your business online. The world is open to you, right? You could go and do basically make a traveling lifestyle, if they would call you to do a road trip thing, and or take it online. Go ahead.
Well, it's the traveling lifestyle, and it's the lifestyle of the middle-aged person too, where we're the sandwich between, our kids are gone, but they might keep needing us, and our parents are aging and more in place. So I want to be able to be there with them. That's nice. For me, that's a piece of how do I live my life meaningfully, is I keep those relationships tight and important to me, which means that the deep, I have to have 9 to 5 hours in my office doesn't necessarily, speaking as a business owner to other business owners, that isn't going to work for me.
Yeah.
At this life stage, and what I think is, and with what is meaningful to me.
Yes.
I need to be mobile.
I love that you are role modeling that we can literally choose like what kind of life and business we want to design, and then create that and step into that, right? So yeah. So wow, there's so many ways I could go with this, and let me see, we're at 25 minutes, so 24-ish. So let me ask you this question. If you were to give a tip to your younger self, what, like, about starting your dream business, like keep going, like what comes to you, like what tip would you give to her?
To my younger self. Especially with respect to business. Oh, I'd say listen to your heart sooner, honey.
Nice.
Well, and that every single thing that I have found that has enriched me has been the stuff, quite honestly, that hurt a lot.
Nice. Whoa, what a great view of it.
When I experienced like the deaths of, God, the deaths of pets. I mean, I can still be in tears about my dog from last year.
Yeah.
Every single change, every single loss, and this is not being schmaltzy and Pollyanna-ish. It's not the, open a door, close a door, open a window sort of thing. And yet we say those things because they're actually true. So I think I would be trying to give my younger self a message of, actually, there is a quote. I'm going to give you a quote from the Anam Cara tradition, which is a tradition that I'm studying in right now. It's the Celtic idea of soul friend, specifically around how often you talk about your Anam Cara as being a guide for you spiritually as you are coming to your death. And the blessing, and this doesn't sound like a blessing in this culture, but it is. May you come to know what has hurt you. May you allow it to come close to you. And in the end, to become one with you.
Whoa, man, that is so powerful. And I can relate to that.
Blessing.
Yeah, and I feel that is like one big thing, like if you really want to feel called to grow your dream business, or make it in a way that it's empowering and feels good, like that inner growth piece that you're touching on with this. With the embrace, it's everything. Yeah, it's like the core, and mine too, and both of our coaching, I'm sure it's like,
it is our business.
It is.
What has hurt me the most has been where I have the most to give to other people.
Right. Yes. Nice reframe. Yes.
Otherwise, it's it's just taking place up here. It's like, oh, I have a lovely idea, but it's just an idea. This is is something that means something to me.
Yeah, if you're going for a meaningful business, that's the way to go. I mean, there's always commodity businesses and where you can have pretty sparkly things, and that works, right? And that there's nothing wrong with that.
But and that can come from like play. That's, I mean, my stuff, my commodity, my stuff. Even when I was making costumes, still had something to do with that deep need.
Nice.
For wings or a mask.
Yes.
Whatever, right?
Or a mask. What?
For wings or a mask.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Nice. I love it. Thank you so much. That was such a lovely conversation, Franny. I love how deep you go with everything, and like how deeply inspiring you are because of it. So thank you so much for sharing, all of you, and your journey, and your power and presence is amazing. And I'm excited to see more of you in the world. The world needs you. You really have a great energy of helping people with love. I can feel that and see that. Amazing. Thank you. So where can people find you online if they want to learn more about anything that you touched on or get in touch with you?
You can, the simplest thing to do is simply to go to my website, which is openhearthstudio.com. And that's open hearth like the old-fashioned fireplace, not open heart like surgery. It's not that.
Right.
So OPENHEARTH studio.com.
Nice.
There's also a Facebook business page Open Hearth Studio. That's another place you can get to, but I've got a blog on my website, and so there's a lot of writing about these issues. And as I gradually do the shift from in-person to being able to work anywhere, hopefully my website will reflect that.
Of course, it always evolves, just like and catches up eventually a little bit, and then we grow. It's all good.
Exactly.
It tries to catch up.
Once again, I will trust.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having been part of my show, Franny, and I wish you all the best. And to all of you, reach out to any of us if anything inspired you. We're both here to inspire and empower you to follow your dream and embrace the whole adventure from challenging times to the good times. All of that together is part of it. Much love to all of you.
Thanks, Ashley.
Yes.